Hello and welcome back to You Can Play Europa Universalis IV, the series designed to help new players to the game learn some basic concepts and get in and start playing without feeling overwhelmed. My name is Sean Sands. I've been a Europa Universalis player for, we'll just say, a very long time. In this episode, episode 3, what I want to talk to you about is the first 5 things to do when you first start your new game. Here is an example. We've just fired up a game as the Ottomans. We haven't even unclicked pause, and there are a million things we could do, but there's really 5 things you want to do before you click the pause button and let time begin going through. And I think they're probably the most important things. The very first thing, actually, for me, is to check your rivals. You do that by clicking up here and open the country view. And right in the diplomatic view, this little bird here, you can see who your enemies are and your rivals. You won't have set any rivals by the time you start, and that's something you can obviously do once you get going, but you want to know who hates you, because that's really how you're going to have to begin to plan to decide who to keep an eye out for. One of the great ways to do that also, and get a sense also of how, generally speaking, your neighbors and the people around you are likely to perhaps go to war with you, or join your enemies to go to war with you, or partner with you and become your ally, is click this diplomatic map mode, click the opinion button, and click your country if it's not already selected. And you can really see here that the Mamluks, Lithuania, Poland, Hungary don't like us, or they hate us. They're our rivals, as we saw a moment ago. Places like Serbia, Byzantium, and some Wallachia, which is a lot of our border nations that feel very threatened by us, also don't like us. But we have places like Crimea over here, Tunis, a lot of these countries that are very specifically in the same sort of religious tech as we do, but also don't feel threatened by us, seem to like us, which brings us to tip number 2. The next thing you do is make friends. So you need to know who hates you first, because that's how you have to defend again. But you also want to make friends. Even as the strongest country in the game, if you completely go it alone at the start, your rivals, your enemies will group up together, and they will decide to kill you. So you want to begin to make friends. And you should know you have a certain number of friends that you can easily have associated with you. Here it is, the diplomatic relation number, which is 4 for most countries, which means I can have 4 friends or vassals or countries I have some sort of ongoing treaty and agreement with. So for example here, commonly if you're the Ottomans, allying Tunis is a good call, and then you can actually have to let a day pass before you can ally your next country. Crimea is another relatively obvious one. And then you can look around for other countries that seem like they might be a good idea. Once you have friends, that's great, because you actually get to see a lot of information about those friends. And if somebody like Poland or Hungary or the Mamluks come attacking you, they will be called into a defensive war, which is good, because war is a key part of this game, which brings us to tip number 3 and 4. Learn about your armies. So you have units on the field in most cases. You can zoom in and see them standing around. And you should begin to think about what size you want your army to be. At the beginning of the game, particularly if you're playing in 1444, you'll see that most of your army is made up of infantry, with about a third or less of the army made up of cavalry. This is a good balance. You're generally going to want most of your army to be infantry. Later, when you reach a certain military tech level, you can begin to introduce artillery in there. And you'll have anywhere from have those make up 30 to 40% of your army. Infantry make up 50%, and probably have cavalry make up about 10%. But you have a fixed number that you can have easily in the field, which is your army force limit. We have 26. Right, 12 plus 14, that's how many of these divisions, is that right? We're going to say divisions, whatever. Units, 26 units in the field. We could have as much as 35. Now, it's important to keep in mind that building a new unit costs an initial cost, but it also has an ongoing cost. So what you're going to have to do is sort of balance it. You want to check how much money you have, how much money you have coming in, and then build an army to match that without bankrupting your country. Similarly, number 4 is check your navy, which is a similar sort of thing, right? These act in the same way, like military. And you have heavy ships, light ships, which are primarily used for trade, galleys, which are usually used as a attack ship in inland waters, such as the Mediterranean. They're good. They're as good as they're going to get in places like the Mediterranean or the Black Sea up here. They're a lot less useful out in the open waters of the Atlantic or the Pacific. And finally, you have transport ships, which you can use to transport across water. Obviously, they do what they say. Early on, I like to primarily focus on light ships for trade. In a lot of cases, I will just get rid of galleys. It saves some money on that maintenance fee. Potentially, you can even sell it to allies. And then you can make a decision about transport. If you're playing as somebody like England and you know you're going to go to war with France, you're probably going to want to be able to ferry troops back and forth. If you're Austria and you just have the one port and all of your potential enemies are inland, you're not likely to need transport. So think of it that way. So you've checked your army. You've checked to make sure you're at your force limit. Obviously, naval units also have a force limit. You can go over the force limit, but it begins to cost a lot more. That maintenance per unit goes way up. And the last thing you want to do as your first thing is to check your Monarch points. Talked in the last episode about how vital these Monarch points are. They are based to some degree largely on the skill of your ruler, +3. So your base unit is 3 of each of these, and then you get 6, 4, 6 here. So 6 plus 3 is 9. That's the 3 plus the base gives you 9 of these per month. 4 plus 3 is 7. That gives you these. The reason you want to focus on these is you can increase them by recruiting advisors, but they're also going to tell you a lot about how quickly you can expand, how quickly you can tech up, how quickly you can, begin to develop your country. If you have Monarch points coming in, you can think quickly and hard about expanding, because expanding to a new province requires potentially diplomatic power to, set up the truce that gives you that province, requires administrative power to core it, could require military power to just make sure you have the latest tech. So if you're not making very many power points, you might want to think about holding back a little bit until you are, making sure you store those up for the most important things. And if you've got 9 or 10, or even 6 or 7 coming in, you can be a little bit more, I don't know, frivolous is probably the wrong word, but you have some to spend. You have some you can potentially use. So those are the things. Check who your rivals are. Put your diplomats to work, making friends in the region and improving relations with those friends. Check your army, see where your force limit is, see how much army you have out in the field, add to it as needed, do the same with your navy, and then finally check your Monarch points. After that, there are many other things you can begin to do, but you're probably ready to go ahead and hit that pause button and get the game going. So, take those 5 things, do that, start up a game, go play, and see how it works out. You can play this game. You can do it. That's the whole point. Until next time, as always, my name is Sean Sands. Thank you for joining me, and we'll be back again real soon.